history is an arena of change. And obviously one of the fundamental questions is, does the Bible have a way of telling us what change is changing the right direction and what change is a way of getting lost? And as a result, you have to read the Bible very, very closely. And one of the reasons that I think Yoram is absolutely right in seeing the Bible as a philosophical work is that philosophy is overwhelmingly focused on the opening chapters of Genesis, which we've just begun to read in the synagogue. We just read the first chapters yesterday in the synagogue. And it's a little like Beethoven does at the beginning of the Grosse Fuge. You know, he sets out the themes, and then the development takes a long time, but at least those themes are set out. And here is a narrative that I want to share with you from Genesis chapters 2 and 3, which I haven't seen set out elsewhere. And it's quite important. In Genesis 1, man and woman are created simultaneously, equally in the image of God. In Genesis 2, they're created sequentially. And when Adam sees his wife for the first time, he utters the first poem in the Bible. It is actually what is called a chiasmus, A-B-C-C-B-A in Hebrew. Lezot yikarei isha ki meish lukacha zot. She shall be called woman because she is taken from man. And that sounds quite nice, love at first sight. But actually, it's less than ideal. Why? Number one, he has not given her a proper name. He has given her a generic name. She's woman. And number two, she is subordinate to man. She was taken from man. You know, and Augustine did some stuff with that, partly influenced by Aristotle. I don't want to go down that line. He saw woman, you know, God, man is in the image of God and woman is in the image of man. You don't want to know this stuff. It's horrendous. And as a result of which, bad things happen. The woman rebels, eats the forbidden fruit, persuades her husband eats it. God says, Adam, what have you done? And what does he do? He blames his wife. I hope we've changed a little bit since then, but I'm not always sure. He said, look, if you'd never created this woman, would I have eaten the apple? And it is then that something happens. There's this strange sequence of verses. Adam turns to his wife and gives her a new name. He calls her Chava, Eve, which is a proper name. And he then attributes to her something that makes her greater than he is. Hi haita em kol chai. She is the mother of all life. If we want to be eternal, because we're not going to live forever, so we will only achieve immortality through our children, and I cannot give birth to those children, only she can. And at that moment, Adam has done two things. He's valued her as an individual, and he has set her value above himself. And the very next verse says, and God made them garments of bigdei kotnot or, garments of skin. However, in the school of Rabbi Ishmael lived up in the Galil, and in the Galil they didn't make a difference between an aleph and an ayin, which are both gutturals. And he read it, kotnot or, God made them garments of light. In other words, this couple that he had expelled from Eden, nonetheless, the second Adam recognizes his wife is a person, not just woman. And not just subsidiary to himself, but greater than himself. God clothed them both in light. And I now want to show you something else that the biblical critics never understood. They're completely tone deaf to. The two names of God in the Bible. What in the biblical critical language they call J and E. Hashem and Elohim. If you look at Genesis 1, it's entirely written as E. As in Genesis 2 and 3, it's J-E. And Genesis 4, it's J. Right? Now, what is the difference between E and J? The biggest, greatest answer ever given to that was Judah Halevi in the fourth book of his philosophical masterpiece called the Kuzari, in which he says, E is the God of Abraham, E is the God of Aristotle, the God of creation who deals in generalities, universal laws, and J is the God of Abraham, the individual who relates to individuals. You see how the Bible is telling us that it is only when Adam recognizes his wife as a person that he is capable of recognizing God as a person. So if we men are deficient in our respect for women, we will to that degree be deficient in our religious sense of God himself. So we see that the Bible is setting out an ideal right at the beginning, so that the more we honor women, the closer we are getting to that biblical ideal. And now I want to put a bit more flesh on that. And I'm going to do so in the name of a former Sephardi chief rabbi of Israel called Rabbi Bakshi Doron, who was Sephardi chief rabbi Rishon LeZion in the 1980s or 1990s? 1990s. Rabbi Bakshi Doron makes a very interesting contrast between what Max Weber calls charismatic authority and bureaucratic authority. Who is the charismatic authority in the Bible? The prophet. Who is the bureaucratic authority in the Bible? The priest. Women can't be priests, but they can certainly be prophets. There were 7 women biblical prophets. So when it comes to that individual dignity, Jewish law never distinguished between men and women, the world of the prophet. But when it came to Kavod HaTzibur, the whole field of sociology, which deals with our shortcomings, because blokes create things, you may have noticed this, called alpha males. In fact, a lot of Jewish politics is best studied through the interactions of alpha males at various levels of the animal kingdom. So, so alpha males need kavod, they need honor, and hence the social position of women in Judaism has never been as egalitarian as the charismatic position of women as prophetesses, judges like Deborah, teachers of Torah like the late Nechama Leibovitz and Lahavdil, Viva Zornberg, and so on and so forth. So there is an arena in which the dignity of women has always been equal to men in Judaism. But once that gets into the fields of sociology, it has not always been equal. And we can say that the 20th century and so far the 21st have seen the biggest advances in the role of women within the Jewish religious world, the greatest advances that have ever taken place. Have we reached the destination? Not yet. Is the Jewish people ready for that? Not yet. But at least there's been major progress.